What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Fargo Season 5, out now in full on FX and Hulu. Fargo kind of returned with a more back to the basics style approach with Season 5 after several switch ups and changes with the previous season. And I think for the most part, this perhaps familiarity, this return to the Fargo vibe, if you will, pretty successful. Like, I think Fargo Season 5, I was hoping it would be at least on par with Fargo Season 3 as, like, the third best Fargo season. Hard to ask for the fifth season of anything to be as good as the really stellar first two seasons you got. We haven't touched that again, but that's okay. I don't think that was a realistic expectation. Fargo Season 5, I think, is pretty successful. You have good performances, good acting, and even if I think, plot mechanics might be a bit familiar to that, quote, Fargo vibe, Fargo formula, I actually think we had a pretty surprising, like, subversive ending, which I wasn't quite expecting, given that most of the rest of Season 5 wasn't quite on that level. So overall, I have a pretty favorable view of the season. I think right off the bat, just kind of like your central characters, your central pieces of casting, Juno Temple is really good as Dot. I think she's a really solid, like, lead protagonist, and Temple's able to really imbue, I think, the the fierce, like, desire to be a survivor that Dot slash Nadine had, right? And Fargo Season 5 tackles, I think, some really meaty stuff, and Temple and the Dot character are right in the middle of that. Namely, this show is really talking about toxic masculinity and where that intersects with domestic abuse, like, very forthright in how it's handling that. Of course, I think there's a lot of grounding also in MAGA politics, just, I think, politics and, like, cultural sentiment just generally of, like, the current time. And of course, that's largely through the villain of the season, Roy Tillman, played by Jon Hamm. And I think Hamm, unsurprisingly, does a really good job playing this kind of insurrectionist, independent thinker, but also biblical rooted sheriff character who obviously has really regressive views on gender relations and race and the separation of church and state, all kinds of things, right? So Hamm, I think, did a really good job with that. I think this dynamic, basically, of Dot escaping from him before the show begins, and due to his own perversions, Tillman's obsession with getting his past wife back, even though he's already married with kids to somebody else, in this case, the daughter of the local militia that he's kind of shacked up with, right? I think all of that worked really good. And then, of course, the other side of this coin is Dot's new family, which is, that she married into the Lyons, where you have Wayne, her husband, who played by David Rysdale. I thought Wayne actually, like, really grew throughout this season. Like, towards the end, once like, Wayne gets electrocuted briefly, loses his memory, and then starts to recollect himself. Everything with Wayne, like, I think, just like his cheerfulness, his genuine niceness, like the Minnesota nice, quote unquote, that we get explained to us in the first episode. Like, it's, like, honestly, like, really charming. And I think his also, like, obliviousness to a lot of stuff that's going on throughout this season is also just quite nice, quite fun. So I like that. And of course, his mother, Lorraine, played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, the evil queen, debt collector, multimillionaire person, right? Also a pretty fun character, where she's a lot more, like, villainous and cold in the beginning, but actually kind of comes around and welcomes Dot into the family by the time the finale turns. Really cool. I liked it. I think what's his name? Her Lorraine's fixer, Danish, played by Dave Foley with the eye patch. Nice presence. I think that's kind of like a archetype we've seen in Fargo before. Probably more effective in past seasons, but it was actually kind of tough when he gets axed off, gets whacked in, like, the penultimate or second to last episode, third to last episode. I thought it was, I liked his presence. If anything, I think the characters that don't quite work, and this was definitely a huge problem with Fargo Season 4, where you just had a really ballooned ensemble, and you weren't able to pay off a lot of characters, and a lot of stuff didn't feel fulfilling. I think in this case, That's clearly the case with Trooper Whit Farr, played by Lamorne Morris, who, of course, helps rescue Dot and save Dot from following the kidnapping in the premiere. And then all the way at the end, of course, he gets stabbed and killed by Tillman when he's trying to escape the FBI. And like, I think just Trooper Farr, like, he was just kind of like a plot device. He didn't really have a lot of development as a character. There just wasn't a lot to him. He didn't have a whole lot to really do that wasn't in direct service of the plot elements revolving what Dot was up to episode to episode. So his death, the one like good guy death in the finale, and of course Danish had already died. Like his death doesn't really land as well as I think it should have. If that was a character you had more connection to, that character that had more development. Also, I quite enjoyed Indira, the deputy who quickly starts investigating everything that's kind of going on, the strangeness of Dot's situation as she tries to pretend nothing's wrong with her life. Richa Morjani plays Indira. Also, Indira doesn't get a whole lot of payoff either. Like, I guess we're happy that she kind of gets to level up in life and work directly for Lorraine and make some more money, given that she had severe personal debt issues, right? And I guess it's like kind of like a full circle thing that she gets to make a big dent on getting ahead in life while working for the overseer of debt collection, right? A bit ironic, but like, I don't know, like her husband, her deadbeat husband, played by Lucas Gage, in a recurring role earlier in the season. He cheats on her, she kicks him out, and then she moves on and gets a new job, right? And it's like, also not a whole lot there to that, right? Like, I don't know. I just also felt like it was not the most fulfilling character arc, even if I enjoyed the presence, enjoyed the performance. Joe Keery as Gator, Roy's kind of dipshit adult son. Really awesome casting. It was so nice to have Joe Keery playing like a dickhead again. Since Stranger Things season 1, he's largely had that character on Stranger Things be turned into more of a good guy, right? It's fun to see him being a villain again, but this was a villain who was so incompetent that he kind of bordered on like being comic relief for lots of the season. I really loved earlier in the season where Dot has to basically do her inner Kevin McAllister and Home Alone defend her house from would-be kidnappers, right? And just watching Gator and his goons get exposed at every turn, whether it's by Dot or whether it's by Munch, whatever's going on, I like that, and his arc, where Munch takes his eyes as retribution, his Roy throwing him aside completely, not feeling the use in him and his incompetence. Like, also, I don't know if there's a whole lot of payoff there. Like, he's just kind of going to jail, seemingly has repented a little bit. Whatever. I did enjoy the character and the performance. Yeah, I mean, like, that's kind of like the core crew, right? Who am I forgetting? Oh, of course, Munch himself, right? Sam Spruill really doing, I think, a certainly unique for the season performance where I think Munch, as the heavy, kind of introduced in a more familiar situation, right? As this kind of like unhinged, hard to contain, weapon of evil, chaos agent type character. But the introduction or revelation, in typical Fargo fashion of introducing some kind of spirituality, some kind of, not grounded aspect. There's always a little bit of that in a Fargo season. Finding out that old Munch is in fact this 500 plus year old sin eater, originally from Wales, centuries ago. That was quite the revelation. When that flashback stuff I thought was really cool, really good. And then this all leads up to what made the finale so surprising, which was that Munch is able to seemingly put aside his previous code and his desire to fulfill debts, where Dot is able to basically charm him into opening up and getting something he was never able to get, which was, I guess, like sitting down and having a family meal versus in the past when he was just invited to, eat the sin that wasn't even his and then take the blame off the shoulders of the community, things of that nature. It's a really delicate like final scene, because like you assume it's just gonna go poorly and be like the last bit of bloodshed in the finale, given the fact that the shootout at the Tillman Ranch ends in the beginning of the episode. But no, like it was quite the subversion, quite the flip, and I thought it was pretty enjoyable and definitely unique. Not what I expected. Again, given that most of Fargo season 5 was a bit more conventional. Uh, but yeah, I think overall successful season from Noah Hawley. I don't know if we're going to get a Fargo season 6. We're certainly not going to get it anytime soon because Hawley is already well underway with his Alien series for FX, which has been cast. I believe it's already in production or about to go into production. So, then of course, Alien Romulus, the film separate from that's coming out later this year. So, who knows? Maybe he'll go right into a second season of the Alien series. Obviously, it's IP they'd like to build up over at FX and under the Disney umbrella. So we'll see. But I think Fargo season 5, which again initially was supposed to come after Alien, and then they've actually moved this up in terms of the order of releasing of things. I think it proved that there's still plenty of juice, plenty of life in the Fargo series, and kind of like what True Detective season 4 is showing us right now, where having like a quote like anthology TV brand and then doing something basically completely new every time, even if maybe there's some tonal or setting similarities season to season. I think is a really nice way to kind of thread the needle of needing to use IP to attract audience during the times we live in, as the peak TV era is crested, but also giving you so much room to do something new. And in the case of Fargo, that's still largely Noah Hawley being the creative force behind it. But yeah, I imagine Fargo season 6, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, I wouldn't be surprised at all. But let me know, what did you think about Fargo season 5? Did you find it overall pretty satisfying like me? How would you compare it to past Fargo seasons? Let me know what you thought of the whole thing or anything individual about it. And for more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.